The human arrived on the alien world without ceremony or comfort. There were no cheers, no welcome signs, no kind faces waiting for him. He stepped down from the transport ship onto cold stone ground, surrounded by tall guards whose armor reflected a pale blue light. The air felt heavier than what he was used to, pressing against his chest with every breath. He kept his shoulders straight even though fear sat deep inside him. He knew showing weakness here could be dangerous. He was not a soldier or a hero. He was chosen because he was ordinary. Leaders believed an ordinary human would cause less trouble and ask fewer questions. He was meant to observe, to listen, and to report. Nothing more. He was told to stay quiet, follow rules, never draw attention to himself. From the very first day, it was clear that humans were seen as small and fragile on this world. The aliens were taller, broader, and moved with a calm confidence that came from centuries of power. Their eyes followed him wherever he went, not with anger, but with curiosity mixed with judgment. To them, he was a guest who could easily become a problem. The palace was massive, built from smooth stone and glowing metal. Long halls echoed with every step he took. He noticed how servants avoided eye contact, how guards barely acknowledged his presence. Still, he remained polite, nodding when spoken to, listening more than he talked. He reminded himself daily that he was there to survive, not to matter. Everything changed the day of the royal procession. The city gathered in silence as the royal family prepared to pass through the central plaza. Tall banners moved slowly in the air, displaying symbols he did not yet understand. He stood among other observers at the edge of the crowd, doing exactly what he had been told. Stay still. Stay quiet. Then he saw her. The alien princess was younger than he expected. Not a child, but not hardened by years of rule either. She walked beside her guards with careful steps, her posture trained but her eyes curious. There was something gentle in the way she looked at the crowd, as if she still believed people could be kind. That was when the tension shifted. It started as murmurs, low voices, angry tones, movement where there should have been stillness. He felt it before he understood it. Something was wrong. The guards noticed too, tightening their formation. But it was already too late. A group pushed forward from the side of the plaza. Their movements were fast and reckless. Their voices rose, shouting words he could not fully translate. But the anger was clear. The princess froze. For a brief moment, the guards hesitated, trying to protect her without causing panic. The human did not think. He only saw danger, before anyone could stop him. He moved forward. He crossed the space between himself and the princess with no plan and no protection. He placed himself directly in front of her, turning his body sideways, arms raised not to fight, but to block. The first strike hit him hard. Pain exploded across his shoulder, sharp and sudden. Another blow followed, then another. He stumbled, but did not fall. He heard gasps from the crowd, shocked sounds from those who did not expect the human to step in. The attackers were confused at first. They had not planned for resistance, especially not from someone so small. Their hesitation lasted only a moment. Then the beating began. Hands, weapons, and heavy limbs struck him again and again. Each hit took the air from his lungs. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to stay standing. He shifted his body, keeping himself between the attackers and the princess. He could feel her behind him, close enough that he knew she was still safe. Someone shouted for him to move. He did not. Another blow knocked him to one knee. His hands scraped against the stone ground, skin tearing, but he pushed himself back up. His thoughts were simple now. Stay up. Stay in the way. The guards reacted too late. By the time they reached the attackers, the human had already taken most of the damage meant for the princess. The crowd had gone silent. Even those who hated the royal family stopped shouting. They watched, stunned. As the fragile outsider endured punishment without striking back, when the guards finally pulled the attackers away, the human collapsed. He did not remember hitting the ground. He only remembered the sound of his own breathing, rough and uneven. He tasted metal in his mouth. His body shook, not from fear, but from the effort of staying conscious. The princess knelt beside him despite orders to move away. Her hands hovered over him, unsure where to touch without causing pain. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with disbelief. He tried to speak, to tell her she was safe, but no words came out. Guards lifted him carefully, as if realizing too late that he was not as weak as they thought. Blood stained his clothes. His face was already swelling. Still, his eyes followed the princess until she was out of sight. As he was carried away, whispers spread through the crowd. Not insults this time. Questions, confusion, respect. Why would a human do that? In a quiet chamber far above the plaza, the alien queen watched the recording in silence. She replayed the moment the human stepped forward. She slowed it, studied it, then watched it again. There was no hesitation in his movement, no calculation, only instinct. She said nothing at first. Around her, advisors argued about security failures and political damage. She raised one hand, and the room fell quiet. Her eyes remained fixed on the image of the human shielding her daughter, for the first time in many years. Something unexpected stirred in her expression. Interest, below the palace. In a dim medical chamber, the human drifted in and out of awareness. Voices came and went. Cool instruments touched his skin. He felt pain, but he also felt something else. He was still alive. He did not know it yet. But the moment he stepped forward in that plaza, his life had already changed forever. The human woke slowly, feeling every ache in his body as if the pain had settled deep inside his bones. He was in a quiet chamber, different from any place he had seen before. The walls glowed with soft light, and smooth surfaces reflected shapes he could not recognize. There were no windows, no sounds from outside. Just the soft hum of machines and the occasional voice that spoke in words he could understand only partially. He tried to move. The effort made him groan, his arms and legs stiff and weak. Every muscle seemed to remind him of the beating he had endured in the plaza. But despite the pain, a small sense of relief came to him. He was alive. Somehow, he had survived the attack that should have taken him down. The first person he saw when his eyes focused was not a doctor or a guard, but the princess herself. She was standing at a distance, watching quietly. Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide with concern. But she did not rush forward. She seemed unsure, as if she wanted to approach, but was held back by rules or fear. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice careful. She did not raise it. She did not call for help. She simply spoke to him, as though he were the only one in the room. He tried to nod, but the motion made him wince. He swallowed hard, feeling the soreness in his throat from all the yelling and straining during the fight. "I'm fine," he said finally, his voice rough and quiet. You're safe." She nodded slightly, but she did not smile. Instead, she studied him, as though trying to understand how someone so small could have faced such danger without hesitation. The human wanted to explain, wanted to say that he had no choice, that he could not let them hurt her, but words failed him. It was simple. He saw danger. He moved forward. Nothing more complicated than that. A doctor entered the room then. He was not like any doctor the human had ever seen. He moved carefully, touching him lightly, scanning his injuries with strange devices that emitted soft lights and quiet hums. "Stay still," the doctor said. His voice was calm, precise, without any hint of alarm. "You were lucky. Not everyone survives such an assault." The human tried to focus, to listen, but his mind kept returning to the plaza. He saw the attackers again, heard the blows landing, remembered the crowd falling silent. His body shivered with the memory, and he felt the sting of every hit all over again. The princess moved closer, slowly, as though she were testing whether he would react badly. She did not speak, but her presence was comforting. There was no fear now in her eyes, only gratitude and something else he could not name. Hours passed. The human lay in the chamber, the pain fading slowly as the machines and medicines worked. He thought about the plaza again, about the moment when he had made the choice to step forward. He could not regret it. He knew that even if he had been knocked unconscious, Even if the attackers had been stronger, he would have done the same thing. He would have moved without thought, because letting the princess be harmed was never an option. Outside the chamber, news spread quickly. The crowd that had witnessed the incident could not stop talking about the human. Initially, there had been shock, then fear, and finally, a strange kind of respect. How could someone so small, so fragile, endure punishment meant to harm someone else? Even those who had come with anger in their hearts could not deny the courage they had seen. Rumors reached the queen quickly. She did not move to intervene immediately, nor did she speak. She watched and listened, waiting to understand why this human had acted the way he did. Advisors argued, saying the human was just lucky, or that he would bring trouble to the palace. But the queen remained silent, her eyes fixed on the accounts of the plaza. Meanwhile, the human regained more strength. He could sit up now without pain shooting through his body. He was hungry, though he did not know if he had the appetite to eat. The princess offered him some food, simple and nourishing. He accepted it, tasting it slowly, noting how different it was from anything he had eaten before. She spoke to him occasionally, asking questions about his world, his life, why he had come to this place. Each answer was careful, simple, and honest. He did not exaggerate or hide anything. In return, she shared small details about her life, about the responsibilities and expectations she faced as a princess. It was a conversation neither fully understood, but it built a quiet bridge between them. The guards remained vigilant outside the chamber, yet they treated him with more respect than before. They saw how he had risked himself, how he had endured pain for the princess. Some of them shook their heads in disbelief, while others muttered quietly, almost in admiration, as the sun shifted in the sky above the city. The human realized that his actions had not gone unnoticed. Not only had the princess seen what he had done, but the entire palace was aware. Every whisper, every look, every recorded observation had captured his bravery. It was a strange feeling, to realize that one moment of instinct could ripple across an entire world. The princess finally spoke to him directly. Sitting beside him on the edge of the bed-like surface he had been resting on, her hands rested on her knees, and she looked at him without the careful distance that had kept her restrained before. "You did not have to do it," she said. Her voice was softer now, almost a whisper. "You could have run, or hidden, or done nothing. But you did not. You stood in front of them." He shook his head slowly, feeling the soreness of his neck and shoulders. I couldn't let them hurt you," he said. "I just moved forward. That was all I could do." She looked at him, studying every line of his face. There was something in her eyes that he could not interpret. It was respect, certainly. Gratitude, absolutely. But there was more. A question, perhaps. Or a curiosity that would take longer to understand. Time passed, and the human rested. Every hour, he felt a little stronger, a little more like himself. But he also felt the weight of what had happened. This world was dangerous, and he now knew that standing up for what he believed in came with real consequences. Still, he could not bring himself to regret the choice. The memory of the princess safe, of her trusting him, made every bruise and every cut worth it. As night fell, the human looked around the chamber, the lights casting gentle shadows. He realized that he was no longer just an outsider, a visitor who had arrived to observe quietly. He had become someone who mattered in this world, someone whose actions had changed the course of events, even if in a small way. And though he could not yet understand what the future would hold, he knew one thing with certainty: he would never step away when someone needed protection. Outside the palace, the city continued its life, unaware of the human resting quietly in the chamber. Rumors would spread, stories would grow, and the queen would make decisions that might alter everything. But in this moment, the human allowed himself to simply exist, to heal, and to process the enormity of what had occurred. He was still human, still fragile in the eyes of this alien world, but he had discovered something deeper within himself, courage that came not from power, not from strength, but from the simple choice to act for another, even when no one else would. And that courage would follow him into whatever came next. The news of the human's bravery reached the queen in a way that could not be ignored. She had seen countless displays of courage, battles fought for kingdoms, lives sacrificed for honor. But this was different. This was not power, not strategy, not obligation. This was something simpler, something raw. A human, small and fragile in every measure by their standards, had stepped forward without any expectation of reward or recognition, and had protected the princess with his own body. The queen summoned her advisors. She did not raise her voice or demand answers. She simply watched, letting the recordings play over and over. The human's movements, the hesitations of the attackers, the moments when he could have fallen and given up, but did not. The queen saw it all, each frame etching itself into her mind. "What do you make of him?" she asked finally, her voice calm but carrying weight. One advisor spoke immediately. "He is lucky, Your Majesty. A human cannot endure what he endured without harm. He survived because of chance, not because of skill." Another argued, "He is unpredictable. A human acting in such a way could become a problem. We do not know his motives, his thoughts. We cannot rely on this being." The queen remained silent. She looked again at the recordings, at the faint quiver in the human's stance. The way he protected the princess, even as he took blow after blow. There was no hesitation, no calculation, no fear visible in his actions. She had seen soldiers, even her best warriors, falter under less pressure. Yet this human had endured. Something within him refused to break. "I see something else," she said softly, almost to herself. "I see loyalty that comes from choice, not command. I see courage that cannot be taught. I see a life that, by its very nature, chooses to protect others." Her advisors were silent, unsure how to respond. Few could understand the weight of what she had witnessed. The queen's eyes remained fixed on the human. The image of him kneeling, bleeding, and refusing to yield, she decided then that he could not be left to chance. The human needed to be protected, not as a guest or an observer, but as someone whose actions had bound him to the palace in ways they could not ignore. Orders were given quietly, swiftly. The human would be healed, guarded, and brought into a place within the palace that was safe from further attacks. No one was to question the decision. Meanwhile, the human remained in the chamber, slowly regaining strength. The princess visited frequently, speaking softly, sharing small moments of conversation. They discussed his world, what he had known before arriving, what he expected of this alien place. She did not pry into matters of politics or power. Instead, she focused on him as a person, as someone who had risked everything for another. He found comfort in her presence. It was not the comfort of safety, but the comfort of understanding. She had seen him at his most vulnerable and had not turned away. That simple recognition, that trust, meant more than any reward or praise he could imagine. Days passed, and the queen's interest grew. She summoned the human herself. When he entered her private chamber, he felt the weight of centuries of power in her gaze. Yet, she did not speak harshly, nor did she issue commands. She studied him quietly, as if trying to understand a puzzle that had no clear solution. "You acted without expectation," she said finally. "You risked your life for someone who is not your own." "Why?" The human paused, thinking carefully. The words did not come easily. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "I saw danger, and I stepped in. I couldn't stand by and do nothing." The queen nodded slowly, absorbing the simplicity of his response. Most beings on her world would have calculated risk, thought of consequences, or expected something in return. Not him. He acted purely, without consideration for reward or recognition. That alone made him remarkable. She decided that he must be more than a guest. He must be brought closer to the palace, given a place where he could be observed, where he could be protected, where his courage could serve as an example. It was not a decision of whimsy. It was a decision of necessity. In her eyes, he had proven a value that could not be measured in gold, land, or titles. The human did not fully understand what was happening. He was told he would be moved to a new chamber, under closer watch, and given better care. Guards were instructed to treat him with respect, but not to allow him freedom beyond what was safe. It felt strange to be both cared for and constrained. Yet, he understood the reason. His actions had changed something, and the palace could not risk losing him. The princess accompanied him on some of these walks, moving quietly beside him, answering his questions about the palace and its history. She did not need to explain every rule, every expectation. She focused instead on him as a human, as someone whose life had become intertwined with hers through a single moment of courage. Outside the palace, whispers spread among those who had witnessed the plaza incident. The human was no longer just a visitor. He was a figure of curiosity and respect. Soldiers spoke in hushed tones about his bravery. Citizens wondered how someone so small could endure what he had endured. Even skeptics began to question the human's place in their society. Stories of the plaza would grow, changing with each retelling. The core remained. A human had risked everything to protect the princess. Within the palace, the queen watched closely. She began to understand that his actions created something rare, a bond that was not commanded, purchased, or forced. It existed because he chose it, and that choice made it stronger than any law or rule. She felt a pull toward him, not in the way of desire or ownership, but in the way of recognition. Here was someone whose courage and loyalty could not be ignored. The human's days became a routine of recovery and observation. He trained lightly to regain strength, learned the ways of the palace, and spoke with the princess regularly. Through these interactions, he began to see the complexity of this world. He realized that courage was not enough. Understanding, patience, and care were just as vital. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and the palace glowed with soft light, the queen summoned him again. She did not speak of politics or reward. She spoke of what she had seen, of his choice to protect, and of the way it had changed the palace's view of humans forever. "You have done something remarkable," she said. "Not many can act without fear or expectation. You have created a bond that cannot be denied." The human listened quietly, unsure what to say. He had acted out of instinct, out of the need to protect another. He had not sought recognition or power. Yet now he understood that his choice carried weight far beyond the plaza. His actions had touched those around him in ways he could not yet grasp. The queen's words left him thoughtful. He realized that the future would demand more from him. Not just courage, but understanding, patience, and the ability to navigate a world so different from his own. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, heavy but not unwelcome. He knew that every step forward would matter, that every decision could change the course of not just his life, but the lives of others around him as night deepened. He returned to his chamber, reflecting on the strange turn of events. From a single act of protection, he had been noticed, recognized, and valued in ways he had never imagined. The pain from the plaza still lingered, but it was now mixed with a strange sense of purpose. He was no longer simply a visitor in this alien world. He had become someone who mattered, someone whose choices could shape what came next, and though he could not yet see the full path ahead, he knew that he would continue to act with the same courage and care that had brought him here. He had discovered within himself a strength that went beyond his physical body, strength born of instinct, choice, and the simple desire to protect another. And that strength would guide him through the challenges that were still to come. Life in the palace had changed for the human. He no longer moved quietly in the shadows or stayed at the edges of rooms unnoticed. The events of the plaza had followed him, leaving an impression that could not be erased. Guards whispered when they saw him. Servants paused in their tasks to watch him move, and even strangers in the palace corridors looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Yet he remained the same in the ways that mattered. He did not let attention sway him, nor did he act differently because of it. His focus was always on the people around him, especially the princess. The queen had begun to speak of him quietly to her closest advisors. She did not issue commands in public, nor did she act recklessly. Instead, she made small adjustments to the palace routines that ensured his safety and allowed him to remain close to the princess. He was given quarters within the palace that were private but connected, allowing him to respond quickly if needed. His care was thorough, but always respectful, and he understood the subtlety of the arrangements. No one had told him why, but he could sense that his presence mattered in ways he could not yet fully grasp. The political landscape of the palace was complex, and the human quickly realized that his actions had implications far beyond the plaza. Nobles debated in hushed tones about the decision to allow him such proximity to the royal family. Some argued that a human should never be placed in a position of influence, no matter how courageous. Others whispered that perhaps this human represented something rare, something the palace could benefit from if guided properly. Rumors circulated, as rumors always did, but no one could deny the simple truth. He had changed. How people saw humans in this world. The human himself remained cautious. He knew that appearances could be deceiving, that respect could turn to resentment if expectations were not met. He moved carefully, always observing, always listening. Yet he did not let fear dominate his actions. When the princess needed guidance or assistance, he stepped forward. When she was troubled or weary, he offered comfort. Each small act of service strengthened the quiet bond between them, one built not on words or authority, but on trust and understanding. One evening, as the palace settled into quiet routines, the queen requested a private audience with the human. She did not summon him in anger or in formality, but in a way that carried the weight of unspoken decisions. He approached cautiously, aware that every step could carry meaning beyond what he understood. "You have caused a change," the queen said softly, her eyes fixed on him. "Not in yourself, but in the hearts of those who witnessed your courage. People speak differently now. They hesitate before judging. They consider loyalty and choice in a way they did not before. And that is because of you." The human listened quietly. He had not thought of his actions in that way. To him, he had only moved to protect someone in danger. But hearing it expressed like this, he began to understand the impact of what he had done. He had not realized that a single choice, a single moment of courage, could ripple outward and alter perceptions and expectations across an entire world. The queen's expression softened slightly. "Because of your actions, I have decided that you will remain under the palace's care. Not as a servant, not as a prisoner, but as someone whose life and choices are now tied to this place. Your safety, your presence, your loyalty are of value, and I will not allow them to be overlooked." The human nodded, uncertain of how to respond. He had acted without expectation, and now he was faced with recognition he had not sought. It was strange, almost uncomfortable, but he understood the weight of her words. To remain here was no longer merely about survival. It was about being part of something greater, something that demanded responsibility and awareness. In the days that followed, his life settled into a rhythm that balanced care and duty. The princess continued to be a part of his daily life, and their bond deepened. He learned more about her world, its rules, its dangers, and its expectations. He learned to move through the palace with awareness, understanding the subtle gestures and unspoken signals that governed interactions between individuals of power. And he continued to be ready, always ready, should danger arise again. His presence began to influence others as well. Guards who once saw him as fragile now looked to him with respect, though none dared to question his courage. Servants who had ignored him now offered subtle assistance. Small acts of kindness that went unnoticed by most, but meant a great deal to him. The human realized that courage could inspire, that actions born of instinct and choice could quietly shape the behavior of those around him. The princess often spoke to him about these changes. She did not boast or claim credit. She simply observed the world and remarked on how the human's actions had shifted it. "People speak of you differently now," she said one day. "They hesitate before judging. They think before acting. It is because of what you did." He shook his head slightly. "I only did what I had to do," he said. "I couldn't let anyone be hurt." She smiled faintly, a small gesture that carried more warmth than words could convey. "And that is why they respect you." Yet even as recognition grew, challenges remained. Not everyone in the palace welcomed his presence. Some nobles whispered about his influence, about the disruption caused by a human acting with courage and choice. Their words were veiled, their intentions hidden, but the human could sense the undercurrents. He knew that to navigate this world, he would need more than courage. He would need patience, understanding, and an awareness of the delicate balance of power. The Queen's attention continued to focus on him. She did not interfere in his daily routines overtly, but her interest was ever present. It was not the interest of possession, but of recognition. She saw in him something rare, a courage that was untrained, a loyalty that was chosen, and a strength that could influence the hearts of others without command or coercion. One evening, as the palace lights dimmed and the city outside settled into quiet, the Queen summoned the human again. This time her words were direct, carrying the weight of authority and the subtle acknowledgement of desire, not for ownership, but for the rare courage he had displayed. "You have earned a place here," she said. "Your actions have changed how this palace, and perhaps this world, sees humans. You are no longer an outsider. You are under my protection, and your presence will be recognized accordingly." The human understood the significance of her words. He was being invited into a space that was previously closed, recognized for the strength of his choice and the courage of his actions. It was not a gift he had sought, but a reality he could not ignore. To remain here was to accept the responsibilities that came with visibility, with influence, with connection. As he returned to his quarters that night, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the moment he had stepped into the plaza to protect the princess, his life had changed irrevocably. He had survived violence, gained recognition, and been drawn into a world of power and influence that he had not sought but could not now avoid. The weight of his choices rested on his shoulders, heavy but purposeful, guiding him forward into a future shaped by courage, loyalty, and the simple, profound act of protecting another. The human had settled into a rhythm in the palace. But he knew that life here would never be ordinary. Every day brought new lessons about this world, about the people in it, and about himself. He had been recognized not just for survival, but for choice, an unplanned courage that had shifted perceptions and touched the hearts of those around him. And yet, he remained cautious. He had learned that recognition came with responsibility. Responsibility often came with unseen challenges. The princess continued to be a quiet presence in his life. Their bond had grown beyond the immediate events of the plaza. She sought his opinion on small matters, shared stories of her childhood, and sometimes simply sat with him, offering silent companionship. For the human, these moments were grounding. They reminded him why he had acted that day, why his choices mattered beyond survival. The palace itself had changed subtly. Guards treated him with respect, often stepping aside when he passed, but without bowing or fear. Servants offered him quiet assistance, bringing food or supplies without making it seem like charity. Nobles whispered about him, debating his influence and the meaning of his presence. And through it all, he remained a steady figure, neither seeking recognition nor fleeing from it. His courage had earned him a place, and he carried that place with humility. The Queen, however, was a constant in his awareness. He knew she watched him, not in the way of surveillance, but in the way someone observes a rare event in nature. She understood what he represented, choice and courage intertwined. One evening, she called him to her private chamber. Her words were measured, careful, and filled with significance. "You have changed more than just this palace," she said. "You have altered how we see humans. Your actions have proven that courage is not determined by size or strength, but by the willingness to act when it matters most. That is why you will remain here, not as a guest, but as someone whose presence has meaning." The human listened quietly, feeling the weight of her words. He had acted out of instinct, without thought for recognition or reward. And now, the Queen was acknowledging the broader impact of that choice. He understood that this was more than protection or care. This was a bond of trust and acknowledgement that could not be undone. As days passed, he began to see the implications of staying. He had a role now, a responsibility not just to survive, but to continue acting with the same courage and consideration that had brought him here. His decisions mattered. How he treated others, how he moved through the palace, how he protected those in need, all of it carried weight. The princess often spoke to him about these matters. She did not command, nor did she lecture. She simply shared her perspective, helping him understand the nuances of her world. Through these conversations, he learned patience, diplomacy, and the importance of subtlety. Courage alone was not enough. Wisdom and understanding were equally vital. Outside the palace, stories of the plaza and the humans' bravery continued to grow. Citizens whispered in marketplaces. Guards shared the tale in quiet corners, and nobles debated the meaning of his actions. He had become a symbol, not by choice, but by consequence. And he accepted it, knowing that symbols carried responsibility. One evening, the queen approached him again, this time with a more personal tone. She spoke of trust, of respect, and of recognition. She did not speak in demands or threats, but in acknowledgement of what he had already proven. You have earned a place beside the throne, not because of your strength, but because of your heart, she said. Your actions have created a bond that cannot be ignored. You are no longer merely a human in a foreign world. You are part of it by choice and by courage. The human understood. He was no longer an outsider, no longer someone who could step away without consequence. His life was intertwined with theirs, with the palace, and with the future of this world. And he accepted that, not with pride, but with quiet determination. He began to take on small responsibilities. He assisted in organizing tasks, guided the princess when she faced decisions, and offered counsel when appropriate. Each act reinforced his place in the palace and strengthened the bonds he had formed. He remained humble, aware that every action carried significance beyond what he could see. Through all of this, he learned about patience, about listening before acting, and about understanding the perspectives of those very different from himself. Courage was important, but so was wisdom. He realized that his actions could inspire others, shape perceptions, create change in ways that brute force could never achieve. The princess often expressed quiet admiration for him. She did not speak of love in the way humans might, but there was respect, trust, and acknowledgement in her gaze. She knew that he had risked everything for her, and that knowledge created a connection that could not be broken. It was a bond built not on possession, but on shared understanding and mutual care. As time went on, the human's influence within the palace grew quietly. He was consulted, observed, and respected, but never treated as above others. His humanity remained central. The qualities that made him small and fragile in comparison to the aliens also made him uniquely capable of empathy, instinct, and courage. These qualities were recognized and valued. Forming the foundation of his new life, the Queen's acknowledgement became a guiding principle for him. He understood that recognition did not remove responsibility. Every choice mattered, every action carried weight, and every decision shaped the lives of those around him. He accepted this, not with fear, but with a quiet resolve. He had stepped forward once, and he would continue to step forward when needed. One quiet night, as he walked through the palace corridors, he reflected on how far he had come. From a simple visitor, uncertain and cautious, he had become a figure of quiet influence and respect. He had endured pain, faced danger, and acted without expectation. And through those actions, he had earned not just recognition, but a place in a world that had once seemed alien and unwelcoming. He realized that his journey was not complete. There would be challenges ahead, moments that required courage, patience, and understanding. But he also knew that he was capable. He had discovered within himself a strength that went beyond physical resilience, a strength born of instinct, choice, and the simple, profound act of protecting another. The palace continued its life around him, bustling with activity, decision-making, and the quiet hum of power. The human moved through it with awareness and care, no longer merely surviving but participating, shaping, and influencing. He had become a bridge between worlds, proof that courage and empathy could transcend difference and that one life, guided by choice, could make a profound impact. In the end, the human understood that his life would never return to what it had been. He had become part of something larger, something meaningful, something that could not be undone, and he accepted it fully. With quiet determination and an unwavering commitment to act with courage, loyalty, and care for those who could not protect themselves. As dawn broke over the palace, he stood at a window, watching the city awaken. He felt a deep sense of purpose, a connection to the princess, the queen, and the world he now called home. He had endured, he had acted, and he had been recognized not just for surviving, but for choosing to act when it mattered most. And that was a truth that would guide him for the rest of his life. After months in the palace, the human had begun to understand the rhythms of this world, the delicate balance between authority and choice, and the subtle power of courage that did not rely on force. He had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. Yet he remained humble, aware that every action he took mattered not just for himself, but for the people around him. The princess had become a steady presence in his life. She was no longer simply someone he protected. She was a companion, a guide, and a source of understanding about a world so different from his own. They spent long hours walking through the palace gardens, discussing everything from the smallest details of daily life to the larger responsibilities of leadership. These conversations were not formal lessons, nor were they filled with politics. They were moments of connection, building trust, respect, and quiet friendship. The human often thought about the events of the plaza, the day that had changed everything. He had acted without expectation, purely from instinct. And yet that single choice had created ripples that reached far beyond the immediate moment. People spoke of him differently now, treated him with respect, and looked to him as someone who represented courage and loyalty in their most raw and human forms.